Everything should be mostly set. Hello. Okay, so today is a bit different. I am not streaming Nimbus Company, which is probably for the better. Because imagine if I was streaming Nimbus Company, how sad that would be. Anyways, hello. Okay. Whoa, I can hear myself. I should not be hearing myself. No. We don't do that here. Okay. Actually, I do have kind of an issue because let me actually. Okay, I can actually remove projects from my project list. I have a bunch of projects from school because I do some game development stuff at school, and I kind of don't want that showing. So I need to actually remove all of these real quick. It might take some time. Actually, I'll stream my I'll stream GIMP first, and I'll show off a couple things. Mostly just scribbling on a whiteboard because it is pretty useful to do that. And I have a couple other things to show off as well. I'm just gonna leave the starting soon screen. I could probably switch it to my roleplay starting soon screen. It wouldn't be too bad of an idea. Anyways. Yeah, so welcome. Okay, so I have a couple of things open already. Let me make sure everything is all geared up. Yeah, I have a bunch of weird things here. You know what, I can just leave the other stuff in the background. Okay. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show a different Oh, what? Oh. That's not what I want to show. Okay. So, I can probably switch the music to something more chill. Let me find something. I'm gonna be mostly using Dark Knight's music because why wouldn't I? Here we go. Alright, I might use some Nimbus and Library Ruiner music in the future. Whatever I feel like using at the time. So, essentially, what I'm doing here is scribbling. A lot of people would not know my Planus Rolecall too well. Planus Rolecall essentially is basically just you have a bunch of grid tiles, and you can play on them. It'd be actually easier if I showed the project. Hold on, I can actually just do that. I can show a bunch of my random projects because I have a lot of things I can show. Yeah, let's show this off. Oh, that's still there. That's a bit awkward. Okay, I should probably leave it like that. What was I using this for? I think I'm trying to figure out what anything here was used for before. But I think it might just be. No, that just might have been what I was using in the past. Oh, this wasn't full screen. That's why. This is my actual full screen stuff. Okay. Essentially, for those who don't know what Planus Rolecall actually is. Okay, this is a terrible example. This is a fight I was doing in the past. Essentially, it is a tabletop RPG game which has a lot of Excel spreadsheet work, which I can also show in a moment. I do have a previous stream on it. Which one was it? I actually don't have any YouTube videos on it because it's just kind of hard to make a video of what is essentially just moving tiles around. I do have one on this. I might post it in the future. That one is actually a pretty good one, but overall, it's kind of hard to make a good video out of these, like scratching from these speedruns, because it's it's very much a lot of microprocessing and getting the, because all of this is manually done, right? All of this is manually done. I have to manually place every single action. And a fight like this, where there's one player and there's 8 enemies, is very tedious, because I have to make every single enemy do something manually, and then make a player reaction to it. Which, like, it's so, like, if you've ever played a card game with yourself, and you try to play both sides of it, to, like, self-analyze both sides, some people do that, you'll know it is kind of hard to always play unbiased, and always play without trying to make one side win and stuff. And, I mean, I always, with the enemy side, always play AI style, which is that they will always go aggressive, and always try to win by pure attack, whereas as a player you can make more basic moves. Because this game has a lot of evasive capability where you can just not engage the other player, and that can sometimes be the winning strategy. So there's a lot of issues with having myself do things manually and not having a player run them, or like a DM or anything, having to stuff with human agent or computer run everything. Yeah, there's issues like that. But yeah, if you want to see one live stream, it would be day 1 game deving playtesting, which is when I was trying to stream in June and it kind of fell flat, and now I'm a bit better minded hopefully for this. That one was kind of a showcase as to even like a 1v1 where the odds are so stacked in my favor just by the playstyle. It still took it 30-40 minutes to realize what was essentially a solved fight that with an actual game engine and like as an actually functional standalone game, like an actual video game oriented type of thing, that type of fight would be done in about 2 to 4 minutes. And that's always been the issue, is the micromanagement has always been very difficult. Now, the reason why I am going with Star of the City is it has better and easier mechanics to implement. It is more built for human microprocessing, which means that, doesn't mean it's going to translate. It actually means it can be sometimes very hard to translate into a machine system, but because there's a lot, with that you have a lot more choice agency. There's not a lot of just direct Boolean logic. There's a lot more choice logic, like long list choices. I'm probably getting 40, but essentially with this system, I mean, I've always tried to make this system cater more to machine. You know, it's always a lot more yes and no questions, and it's more structured as a yes and no system. A bit different there. We're gonna when we get further in the development of the Star of the City interactive engine, we'll start to see how those logic systems will work. But with this system, there's a couple of interesting quirks. Firstly, and this is just going to comparisons between this system and Star of the City and Planus Rolecall, which is that firstly I have a movement board hexagonal too, and it is rotation specific. Games like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons and the like, from what I know of them, I hate them, only have not really actively played them in years. From what I know of them, there's not a lot of rotation requisite. Positioning matters to some degree, but there's no rotation as there is here. If you actually look at the attack ranges, I'll often have an attack range like for this character, 3 forward spaces. Sometimes it will be a bit different. Sometimes it may be something very weird, like a straight line, or maybe a cross angle, or something very weird. Like these enemies actually have one where it's attacks like this, and it attacks like this. It's very interesting, and it's very, very unorthodox style of having attacks be dished out. And of course the game time system here, this whole timeline grid, is one of the most difficult things to implement because it's dynamic. not just dynamic turn order, like, you know, there's a lot of dynamic turn order systems, but it is a very dynamic in the actual microplay of it. Each action has different colored bands. Typically, these are the initiation time blue, ready time green, and active time red. Those 3 times will do different things. Typically, you can cast during the ready time, or for evasions, you can evade during that time. Active times typically have attacks, and usually your after action cooldown wait time. The distribution of the times are different. Like you can see, this one is very heavy on active time initiation, not as much ready. This one is almost instantaneously ready to be ready. And some actually have very quick attack reaction, which I don't think are here. I mean, this one's a defense action here, which has a pretty solid reaction time. But overall, the issue with this is that there is a lot of microplay in each action. As I always explain it to people who are trying out my system for the first time, within the span of a single action, everyone else could have taken 2 actions. And that could have changed how your action is going to outcome by maybe increasing its speed, decreasing its speed, canceling it, causing it to force a reaction, causing you to cancel out of it. And there's a bunch of other things such as chain actions, interrupt actions, non-trigger actions. And if I show the actual Excel spreadsheet, you'll see how much stuff there is, which I can actually show now. Let me actually get that open, just so I can fully explain where I'm coming from the future goal aspect, because of course, my goal is to make Star of the City into an interactive engine, but that is more a beta test for what I'm actually going to be making, which is really, really high complexity content. So, let's see here, where is it? There it is. Yeah, so this thing, and I'll compare this to, of course, Star of the City in a moment. Actually, I can probably just stream my whole window essentially pretty safely. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So, Star of the City, and I'll go into how this system works. It is not my own system, it is a system I am using as a basis for what I'm going to create in the future. With my system, there's a lot more complexity. I'll use one of the characters I've been working on lately, for instance. Actually, yeah, I can use some of these. So I can actually start with the rentals. The rentals are like the most bare bones simplistic that I get, which is still pretty complex because they still have gimmicks to their design. But as you can see, there's ranges, there's different action types, there's roll values which go into a formula for actual damage calculation, the time values, and all of the clauses, which can range from anything like you can move forward a space, or you can inflict poison, to anything like if this unit has a certain thing, change the time scale in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways, actually. Chain actions too. It continues to boil over into a very high complexity situation where there's a lot of mechanics at play. Let's see. Uncashable, so that's like normal. A lot of it is referenced off of Nimbus Company and Library of Runa, which of course Star of the City is itself based off of Library of Runa. So there's a lot of inspiration there, but of course Library of Runa and Nimbus Company in actuality are actual video games, which keep the micromanagement processes to the computer side and not the human player side. Of course, that is not possible in a tabletop system. This, of course, is basically tabletop simulator, but my own engine, because my own system is very unique and doesn't exist anywhere else. And everything that I want to do is addressed to the console. If I want to attack an enemy, I have to manually do every single base calculation, and there's some macro automation that can apply to plus 20% power and some other buffs here. Like if I give him fragile or protection, it will apply that. Even still, yeah, there's a lot of issues with having to do all of this typing. If I make a mistake, I don't actually have a built-in undo command, so I have to manually fix their health. Which is very cumbersome to do. That takes a lot of time. All of that action right there was like, what, like 30 seconds? But it adds up when this could have been resolved in about 2 seconds. That is about a 15-fold increase if you think about it. It's not just 28 seconds, it's a 15-fold time increase. Very inefficient. Hence why hence why I've always wanted to digitize and computerize everything here. But the issue, of course, is that first of all, I'm a perfectionist. I want to design a system that is very scalable to everything I want to do. And I don't know how to do that first try. It is a very hard mindset to get over. I have to include all of these different attributes, all of these different things, and of course I'm only showing the basics of it because there are also equipment factors, and when we get into high-level equipment, that same overhead to make a single action, when my ultimate goal with a system like this is to have more macro play, where each individual action isn't like entirely important to your strategy, but it is a part of a ramp-up build-up procedure. And also because I'm inspired by kind of like games like Organize, which have more wave-like play styles, where there's a large enemy base that you can clear out, and there's a small step factor to your ramp up or ramp down, and the back and forth between the enemies and the players. In a game where you're only taking 5 actions in the entire fight, which is kind of what this system is at the moment, each action is tremendously impactful, which is always fun, but it also means that there's a huge step factor in the balance and imbalance of power, which can kind of be a bit awkward to work around, especially when I want to show an enemy's moveset. For instance, like some enemies have like 12 different actions and have some specific ultimates. At the same time, an enemy could be completely flanked from all sides, and even if they have 5 times the health of a player, they're going down in half the time it takes to kill a player, because it's like a 5v1 or something, or just and player power scaling and just opposite attacks against an AI-like functioning system that is making computer-like decisions. So that's typically how I play it as a DM, is to make more predictable actions as best as I can, but still trying to preserve like the self-preservation of the enemy whenever possible, while maximizing damage. It's always been my philosophy to do that. That being said, like when I use this enemy in particular, I never use pain and treachery. There was never a time for me to use this action. It is an issue of like action inflation, where having 12 major actions to use, plus some side actions, is very, very hard to manage. That is a very true factor. So, compared to, say, and then we'll go back to Star of the City here. With Star of the City, here is a character that I made, for instance. And this character, this is just a character I was going to make for a one-shot, has 4 actions essentially. Doesn't go, but it's a very small action base. Your rotation is very quick. I think there are some example enemies in here. Maybe these are all other content. Like even these enemies, yeah, they will have like 4 actions. And there's a very good action rotation, which is actually the better way to design a TTRPG, is to have like 3 actions here. Lower action rotation rate. As with mine, very different. Of course, I have chain features and stuff, which kind of incentivize the usage of a lot of these actions. Like agitation was never used on its own, but used as a supplement to these other actions for the +1 maximal. Other stuff like that. overall, what I'm saying here is that there's a lot of complexity. I also make a lot of exceptions. So it's really hard for me to develop a system around this, knowing how far it's grown in advance. I have not seen any of the homebrews for Star City. I don't know how crazy the system can get. I've actually never even played in the system before. I've made a character and did like a self-combat test on myself, and that was all I've ever done with the system. So I don't know how insane it gets. I don't have a feel of the actual potential of the system. I know it's high, right? Like any system, the potential is actually really high in a lot of systems, where you have that much free liberty. And there's other things like build making and stuff, which are pretty big factors there. Like when I get to archetypes and such, that's going to be an issue. Because with archetypes, there's an issue of like engineer, which can actually change your kit mid-fight. I do not know how I'm going to deal with that. That's not an issue I have to worry about, right? Because I'm mostly focusing on the base fundamental document, which itself is relatively simplistic, right? Like if we go to these enemies here, there's a couple of things. Okay, so these are just notes, I'm guessing. I've never even looked at these. Okay, this guy has 6 actions. But like, if I go to like this guy, for instance, right? Very much all of this is fundamental. Like, I don't even have to worry about, I'm not sure if I have to worry about type, but I can include that. This is all like very simple attributes, very simple data points. All of it's just raw data points that I can manipulate in the future, but themselves are not particularly major. Every action has that's a pretty simple action. Pretty just like, what dice is it? What are the dice stats? What is the cost? And then what does each dice do? And then some on-use, after-use conditions. That's everything for a single action compared to my system, which inherently needs to have more, right? Because firstly, there's chain mechanics. A lot of actions have to have a chain or a chain response. They have a lot of mobility. They also have everything has a scaling action. Like it's very much based on Nimbus company. Every action, every attack for characters nowadays in Nimbus has a scaling option of some sort. So I referenced that when I made my system, and almost every single action has a scaling factor. A lot of them also have clash factors, and then of course the on-hit other effects. And when it comes to more advanced actions like these, it starts to snowball to it's really hard to pick this apart and turn this into digestible chunks to code off of. Especially since I designed it with the thought process in mind that I need to actually make a kind of like a word count compression where I can actually fit everything in a readable manner, because this is about the smallest font size I can use. So I'm limited to 10 lines, about 170 or so words. But obviously I want to split each clause into its own line, so it becomes very, very difficult. To show the maximum, this is like the maxed out how much I've compressed into one single action. Very, very bad. Very, very awful. All that being said, this system is way too complex to make into a game off the bat, especially with my very minimal vanilla knowledge, which is why I am using the SotCIE system. This system is way more digestible, and I can probably make this whole system pretty easily. In fact, let me just take a moment real quick. Oh, I just muted myself instead of taking off the screen. Oh, was I showing? Oh, my Excel was over everything else the whole time. I wasn't showing off all of the stuff here from SotCIE. So whoopsies, that was my bad. I accidentally had the Excel always on screen. My point was that these actions are way simpler compared to what I create in my system. And even my system on the low end is very text heavy because there's not a lot of native, these complexities aren't baked into the native function of an action. They are always appended, which means that every single action has to have a lot of stuff appended because that stuff isn't already a integral section of the system. It is always depended on, which means that I have to design a system that is built on exceptions instead of SotCIE, which isn't so much built on exceptions, and these modifications are way more digestible to look at and then decide how am I going to code this, right? And ultimately, it has a much better tag system than what I do. It actually has a very concrete... Let me find it. Where is it? Is it in the combat section? I don't actually know where anything is on this. It might be on combat? Oh, did they move it to a new... Oh, this is... No, that's something else. Let me find it. I'm pretty bad at finding things on this. I'm not too familiar with it. I've read through... Oh yeah, here we go. Skill tags and dice tags. There is a specific hierarchy. I don't have this. I have to actually invent that hierarchy. So, as a developer, the data is already there for me. I just have to implement it. I'm basically just given a free design document right here, which I don't have for my system. Now, again, as I said, since both systems are based off of Library Luna and with this company, there's a ton of overlap, which is very useful for me. Having all that overlap means that when I design this system, I can turn it into my system with very minimal overhaul. The biggest thing here is going to be the speed system, but that is also going to be a queue-based function, much in the way that my system is a queue-based function, just that instead of with dice correlating to selecting an action, it is selecting an action correlating to specific time-based reaction points at specific points in your timeline, and some reaction magnitude. That is the difference. My system is essentially pick the action, the reactions follow. Stall of the city is pick the reaction, the action follows. Which is actually a really good way to explain this, and this alternative is way simpler because the reactions are a specific hierarchy of choice that is very rarely going to break from the traditional flow of everything that is declared early on and very concretely. Right? And then when it comes to all of your skills, if I go to unique skills, right, like all of these, it is very much processed automatically. Everything here is macroable. There is no choice to a lot of these. Some of them are you may spend, and those ones are going to be difficult. I'm going to have the reaction after declaring the action, which is going to be a bit different, but that's very much in the same vein as my system, which is pretty rough in that, of course, again, you select the action, the reactions follow, and there's a lot of reactions that follow. On start, turn 60 degrees. Which 60 degrees? You have to pick that. Then change to weapon action. You have to pick that. If someone attacks you during ready time, which this actually doesn't have, but it can have a change because of that. If you change strobe gauge to strobe gauge, it will have 0.1 seconds ready time. If you are attacked, you have to react as well. Or you can react with a different weapon that you have. If you're dual wielding, that's something that I just cannot work with. And that's something that SotCIE does not have to deal with, is dual wielding. I hate it. It is very hard to work with. This action, on start, select left word or right word. Even then, you deal 50% damage to the units that are not the main target, so you have to select the main target when you actually attack. And there's so many other things. There's and the high end, right? Going back to, is there anything here a good example? Not particularly. Maybe shows a good example. It's a gunhound bonus, right? Yes. On Q chain, something like that. It is you make an action, you make a reaction, you make a reaction, you make a reaction, multiple reactions to the same action. To the point where each action typically might have anywhere from 1 reaction to maybe even 5 reactions. And that can be resolved automatically in 2 seconds. Or manually, it can be resolved in 30 seconds. Hence why my system takes about 30 to 40 minutes to resolve a combat even as a 1v1. there's so much microplay because there's so many reactions to every action, versus having an action to following every reaction. The more stable play style of Star the City. So, that has all been said now. Alright. So now, alright, so what do I do now? What is the next step? The next step is actually showing up another project of mine. Let me pull that up real quick. I don't actually know where it is. I think I know where it is. Ah, nope, that's not it. Where is it? I'm gonna have to find it real quick. Because I actually do not know where it is. Animations. I have a lot of projects, so it's really hard to know which project is the one I need to use. Is it this one? It's not this one. Ooh, it might be this. Yes. Oh, that's a different thing. Okay, I'm not finding specifically what I'm looking for. This one was created on the 7th of August at 12:40 p.m. I'm actually looking at when these things were created. This one is the same time, so these should be maybe the same version, but I don't know how to do this. Okay. I don't think this one is the correct one. Oh, it's called File. Oh my goodness. Hold on. This is gonna take a moment. I have to actually figure out what save data I have. There we go. So this is something I originally made. I think it predates Star the City. I'm not sure. I don't think it does. I think Star the City was actually made a bit before this. This was made in May of 2025. Because I had AP exams and I wanted my friend to run some sessions while I was gone instead of my campaign. We ended up never really using the system. I don't even remember how it's played. I think you go like A1 dice 1 on E1 dice 1. Yeah, that was your attack system. But on the visual side of things, I have created some of the Library of Runa systems. Right? I have emotion coins, I do a stagger of health. This is in Scratch, not Godot though, but the system still stands. Is it Dite? E1 minus 1? I don't know. I actually don't know. But the point of the matter is that I have done this before. I have done it very simply. Again, very manual heavy. I have manual micro processes that I have to run. So automation is required. But this is essentially what I'm making. I'm making this, but I'm making it in Godot instead of full on a child's programming system. And that's essentially what I am actually trying to make. Is just this, but better and automated. So let me actually pull that up now. I have some other things I will show real quick as well, which is going to be what I am basing everything off of. I don't actually know what is on this. Ooh, actually, yeah, this is actually a pretty good example. Let's see, okay. So, This thing is kind of broken. This system, I kind of broke it. This is essentially going to be the baseline. I'm going to make a copy of this and then work off of it. Because this work I started back in like May, April is a very good baseline. And what it is all of this data. So what this data is, oh, I actually don't have a specific piece of data. Let me pull that up real quick. Open file, it should be in actions, yes. Let's open all of these. This is, of course, my system, not SotCIE, but the metrics are, but the system I'm going to be using is very similar. It is a JSON file tree. It is a very crude system. It is probably not the best system, but it was the first system I came up with that I knew how to implement and I knew I could scale off of. Essentially, you're just using the JSON object tags, key value pairs, where each key is some data point that I want to reference in the future, and then it has whatever value later, which that value can be a single item, single entry, or it can be an array, or it can be another map. This JSON map file tree system is probably the system I will just continue to use for now because I just like the system. I don't have to think too much. It works pretty well. It's very visual, which is very nice. And essentially what happens is I have a whole file tree which has these components. So, for example, this weapon is called a blade. It is a blade. It has a specific color value on display. It has a type, which is a one-handed weapon. It's Mark 1, that was the upgrade system. It wouldn't take Mark 7. Very bad. It has a weight value for carrying capacity. Actions, so you can see one of those actions would be blade slash. This action is actually correlates to, let's see if I can find it. I have a lot of things in here. This action, the most bare bones basic attack action, which are now I've renamed them to offense actions, but that is not relevant here. The blade action slash. It has, for comparison, let's do a quick comparison here between the slash and its JSON counterpart. It is called slash. It consumes 1.6 stamina, which is, it just turned into an int value of just -16. Because for whatever reason, I decided that I really like tenth place denominations. So instead of doing like 18 to 33 damage, it does 1.8 to 3.3. This is a really stupid thing, which is why I made everything integer in my JSON format. Of course, SotCIE, I don't have to worry about this because everything is already an integer. Everything is the exact scale I want it to be. I don't have to do this with conversion today. Type attack, damage slash, damage type slash, tier less than 0, also less than 0. Min and max roll 3 and 6. I do not put these into an array because it's just nice to be able to specifically identify the min roll and the max roll. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a good optimizer. I can probably actually better than having an array or having like roll map, which has a min roll max roll value. I'm only ever going to have these two values. Formula scalar and base, similar nature here. It is just this value, but the actual individual components. Timescales. Oh, this one's very fun because this one is designed with the concept of scalability in mind, where not every action has an initiation ready and active time. That's what this is. Some only have an active time. That's a utility action. Some have just an initiation time because then they have a wait time afterwards. That's a defense action. Counters, they have initiation wait and it's active, so they don't have a ready time. Evasions, we don't have initiation time and have ready and active time. Then there's parries which have initiation and ready time. There are no actions that have only initiation or only ready or no time scales at all. No, there's one that's only initiation and wait. It's called defense. That's why there's 6 actions out of 8 possible implementations. Very cool. So that's the explanation there. You can see why this project is so hard to start, because I spent 40 minutes explaining and it was still not done yet. That's why timescales are like this. Theoretically, we use timescales, and that's why I had to do active time 2, active time 3. I do not have this issue with Star of the City. Timescales, timelines are one of the most difficult things I've ever decided to implement. The concept of having a timeline system is terrible. Do not do this. I hate myself for this every time. I love this system so much. But this system is so impossible to manage because these timescales are adaptable, constantly changing, never properly following a concrete definite structure. There's always differences, there's always exceptions. You always have to be on your toes with this system. And that is a very difficult thing to implement because it's just really hard to know what you want to implement. The logic is very, very complex. Which is why I'm starting with Star of the City. Because the engine's complexity is nothing compared to what I made. So if I can make Star of the City, it'll be so much easier to adapt it beyond instead of making something so grotesque from nothing that I just don't know where to begin. Clashes! I hated this, right? So clashes were never always universal, typically on ready time, but not always. This combined thing where an action can attack and receive it, do not have this issue with Star of the City again. More points for Star of the City, because Star of the City is very simple. Because it is, you react to make an action instead of you make an action which then reacts. When you make your action, you have reacted to make your action, then you have another reaction of selecting the target, and that directly parlays into the receiver making the reaction to then make an action, which is selecting your saved dice, or selecting your own action to combat with. It is a very simple flow, instead of having periods of time within an action which it can cause a reaction, which is a bit weirder to work off of because it then plays off of the actual, you have to reference the status sheet here. Do not have that issue with Star of the City, thankfully. Attacks. This is where it comes to range. Again, Star of the City does not have an inherent positional system. There are no attack ranges, there are no movement abilities. None of that is there, makes it much simpler. So, this is something only important to my system. Target style, this is kind of a bit of a rough one because there is attack weight in Star of the City. I will not worry about that at the moment. We will get to that in another week, maybe. We'll see how it goes. Oh, going to a different page. Time. This is the attack time. It does not happen in Star of the City because everything is instantaneous. When it is your turn to do something, it is your turn. Everything will be nice as follows. Then of course there is conditions. I will actually show something for this. In text, I will show something for this. Actually, yes I can. The text. Obviously, this will also exist in Star of the City. This is just the text. Star of the City actually has more of this because of its formatting. I mean, actually not really. I will probably format it differently, and we're gonna go into how I'm gonna format everything soon. So we'll pull something up on the screen. There's a lot of things I want to show, just to get all of the data out, fresh to start, so you have a perfect idea of what's actually going on. Because there's a lot going on. Let's see. Where is it? New system. Right. I called it new system even though I started it back in February and I have not done much with it since. Oh, this is not it. Yes. So now I will show something from a character called Stella, which is one of the characters that one of my players in my campaign uses. That character is right here. I've been showing it, Gilded Dagger. This is Strike. It is an action, which is relatively simple, honestly. This is actually the upgraded form, which is not shown here. This is the unupgraded form, I believe. Yes. So I will actually pull up the unupgraded form. Oh, there you go. Oh, this is Mark 3, that's why. Okay, so you can see here all of this text, right? It's 3 simple lines. On start, may choose to chain, and then you get these specific effects, and on catch win this. That becomes all of this data. Very bad. And this will still be an issue with SotCIE, but I think without chaining and stuff, because I kind of wrote things up as I went. Like I had like a true and false thing here. Obviously, I was kind of making up terminology and syntax as I went. Like to this is like a tag that says whatever is underneath this map is going to map onto this action directly and mutate it in the queue. Which actually we do have to talk about how I'm going to code everything. That's going to be pretty fun. We're going to get to that in a moment. Today's a lot of talking because it's laying out everything I have to complete. Task list is very long. Very large task list before anything else is complete. So it's going to be a very fun ride. Okay. So, as we can see, very small amount of text can be ballooned out. Now, let me pull up another thing. Oh, would you look at that? A lot more text. Way more text. And all of this set variable x, set variable y is actually a tracker to see this. I'm going to probably use a similar system, but we're going to see how it goes, right? This set variable being set to this, probably a change value. This is just how I have to design stuff. Unfortunately, the thing about this JSON coding system is I am coding everything in JSON. Every single object map pair is going to be a function set, right? So I will go into conditions, right? And it will append these before hit and on when you start listeners. A signal arise before hit. That is the before hit for this action. Before hit, it will then follow the sequence following this array, which is a set of maps. It is an array of maps. The first map, we're going to see what it's looking for. This is basically, the array is basically a loop iterator, iterating through all values of the array, and for each map, it will look for the specific function calls. In this, and really the reason why I don't really need to use a map, I think actually a map here is kind of stupid. The better option is probably to have, I'm really more so using it as, I'm using these maps as a pair, kind of, like an ordered pair of the name and then the value. It's kind of dumb. I could probably use an array for this. Functionally the same, I think, but yeah. I think an array is probably a smarter way to treat this, make a subarray. But that's essentially what I'm doing. All I'm doing is I'm making an ordered pair. It's just my ordered pair has a terminology of key value instead of item 1, item 2. So it's functionally similar. I might change it. I might decide. I don't know. I actually don't know enough. Anyways, when we go into this map, the key, which is the first value of our ordered pair, is set variable. We are going to the function set variable. And it requires more data, which is this next set. Set variable is going to be a method or function, which that is going to be a foreign name call, and it defines a name instead of a default. And then it sees if there's a change value to that, or well, before it would check a set value, and it will set it to a thing. What is it going to set to? It's going to set to the function toTarget. That's the function that's going to have a return value, which is going to be get missing health. You probably could call this like return target value or something, and then inside it's the value missing health percent. I don't know, we'll decide. Again, everything here is a function call. It is just articulated in the JSON format, which is actually not really the smartest thing. I think ideally I make my own syntax system, but perhaps that would be something in the future. But I am not about to try to make my own code parser of my own coding language. That would be miserable. What is pretty interesting though is that everything here is fundamentally working off of a set of base components, right? Like event flag if else, that is a method component I can create. And I can create all these method components, which then reaches a point where I can start making unique functions which build off of these. And then I can call those functions instead of the base systems, right? So maybe these missing health values, I can call them in a more optimal way. I think I did it. No, I did it. I can maybe condense these down into calling a specific function, which is the function itself is a set of calls based on a JSON script. And everything here is just a JSON script. It is just a crude coding language that I use for my own entertainment. So how does this apply to SotCIE? Well, I can gut a lot of this because I'm not going to need a lot of it, but some of this is a set variable based on a toTarget get missing health, right? It could be like, for instance, checking if the target has, actually I don't have it here, but like there's like one like check the target has 8+ tremor. As in, where is it? I can't find anything here. Let's see. Oh yeah, tremor exploit. So like something like this. The target has 8+ tremor. That would be functionally similar to the missing health if it's over 30%. Right? And then do a thing. Basically following that paradigm of design, but now in the SotCIE system. That's actually what I'm going to be doing there. So that then leads us to, of course, this behemoth of code, which is not a behemoth of code. It is barely anything. Like, what, 30 lines? 40 lines. Not even. What this is functionally is creating the entire tree. The entire tree of data is created by this. Basically, all of these JSON things are referenced by something else, and it creates a large data set, a large JSON tree that has all the values I need. Now, this is actually in itself problematic. I might change how I do it with, I don't know. It's kind of difficult to say. Right? I will say it is very scalable. Essentially, my design philosophy here is that I have a single zip file, which is the entire game data. I should illustrate this. Well, my voice gets tired from speaking nonstop for an hour. So essentially what happens is you have a single zip file, and that is now going to go into a bunch of different branches. Each of these are different folders. All these are different folders. as so. So all these different folders. One of these will be actions. Another one of these will be I should probably do it in terms of SotCIE, but I'll do it in my system for now. Characters, map, and then maybe like assets. So what happens with this is, right, so a character is going to have a bunch of data, and one of those things is going to be, what actions does this thing have? I sure wonder, what actions does this thing have? What's going to happen is, I'm done. So basically, this is like, all this is one giant JSON tree. The character is going to have a set of actions. It's not going to append these here. It's just going to keep them in this separate area. But when it comes time to the actual game, and it becomes this character's turn, so it's like C1's turn. What happens then? It's going to say take an action, and it's going to have all these different actions, and each of these actions is itself going to reference off of this action value here. Then when you select an action, it is going to add that to a action queue, which is going to make a copy of this. So it's going to make a copy of it. It's trying to make the copy simple. Making a copy of it, which is then going to live over here. And then when that action is done occurs, then everything will be good. Now the issue is that the queue is very big in Planus Rolecall because you are going to be making a bunch of actions, right? You'll be making your action is to go action 1, action 2, action 3, action 4, action 5. So like make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you also have the event queue, which is make 1.1, and then 2.1 goes next, then 1.2, then 3.1, then 2.2 finally, and then like 4.1, and then it becomes all these actions, and you have to complete this, and complete this, and complete 1.2. Now that 1.2 is done, we can now remove this one. So forth, so forth. This is kind of an issue, right? Just because there's so much overhead, there's this whole layers of things to accomplish. It's a huge task, yes, that is not going to be following a specific linear path. It is constantly jumping around. That's why my system is very hard to work with and hard to understand, because it jumps around like a very, very hyperactive animal. So, essentially, what will happen next is SotCIE, right? SotCIE is going to have an action queue, right? You're going to start with the queue. Every single character has a set of speed dice, and each speed dice will live in the queue. Okay? And if you decide to save a dice, it will simply get removed, pushed down as a save dice. And maybe I make them specific that you cannot keep reusing. I don't actually know the rule on save dice. If you can continuously use them until it becomes like a game of who wants to not save their dice. I don't know. But then when someone does decide to keep it, they will now get to make an action, which is a skill, is what the terminology is. You will select a skill. You will then be able to target the skill, and then that person can either react with, and then that person will have to now react with another skill. And when all of this is done, the next person goes and continues the process down and all of that. Very, very step-by-step functional. There's not a lot of, okay, spaghetti to it. The issue with Planus Rolecall is it had to keep an action queue and a prompt queue. Each action has a bunch of trigger prompts that causes it to then react from a idle state. In SotCIE, every character, right? We start with every character. I don't think I'm very literally, but you can understand what I'm saying. Characters here, right? Start with every character, and we now begin to move to what they have, and they of course have all of their attributes. This is like your health or your stagger. I was trying to make it a heart there, but you get the point. Health, or stagger, or anything like that. But then they also have their speed dice. Right? And then they have their actions, or their skills. And then what's going to happen is that's everything there. When it's their dice's turn, they pick the skill. But then they also have their save dice. And save dice, when you decide, so first of all, if some of your speed dice you can hold on to, put in the back, and then release it. Right? Or you can sit, or when you, I think it's actually when you get to your dice, you can make an action to create defensive dice. Or when you use the tap any mixed action, have defense dice at the end, you get to keep those. When someone attacks you, you get to spend them to defend yourself. That's important to on the save list. Those dice also have values. I think they don't become part of the skill after that though, so there's going to be a lot of alleviated issue there with how these speed dice work. I'm not too sure though. Anyways, trying to think what else there is to talk about here. I think actually I can start probably developing. Now that I've given a good idea of how everything works, I should probably talk about how this data tree works. Right? Talks about types and all that. Obviously all this is kind of just based off of my system. It's very, very menacing looking at all of this again. Because all of the looking for path data and all of that is pretty daunting. Yeah. So I will say, like, Godot has a very simplistic baseline code. There's actually no priority queue system, but that's like more time optimizations, which I won't have to worry about. But might be something useful to make. The interesting thing about save dice though is they are kind of contrary to, I guess, how normal PQ work, because obviously they're looking for max values, scaling PQ, which is going to favor the highest dice, but then when you save dice, it goes down to the bottom, because it's kind of in a normal queue at that point. The way I'll specify that is the reuse number takes your priority down. It's the primary way of organizing you. The higher your reuse number is, the lower your B, and then within each reuse number category, higher your speed, the lower your B on PQ. If I did it right, you might be saying it backwards, whatever. being said, I'm actually check something real quick. I might change the music in a moment. I've been listening to the same one for an hour. Perhaps I will change it in a moment. What I will say though is, yes, maybe the music for moments. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna change it. Let's see. This theme is very chill. It's always a good vibe. So we're going to start with the first character I have made, which is Vayner. Let's talk about some facts about this character. Story abilities. We're not going to worry about story abilities. This is a combat game engine. Interactive engine, or combat priority. We're not going to worry about anything else. I don't care. The feats are very important though. We're not going to worry about feats until they come up. We will focus on this later. This will be important. Something like this. Let's talk about how we would diagnose this and how we would cause it to function, right? So, gas quake. When an enemy triggers tremor wisdom, you take half as much dagger, and then you can choose to know any reductions in the tremor count. A tremor burst is a sequence which I will show over here in the status list. Now it takes stagger damage equal to their tremor value. Tremor burst does not innately reduce target tremor, but many effects will reduce the tremor count. Okay? So let's talk about that. The skills list. That's new, I think. Burst. On hit, trigger tremor burst and reduce the target's tremor by 2. Pretty cool. So what this is when this hits you, it triggers tremor burst. Automatically take half as much stagger damage. So when we go into the damage sequence, it is going to say deal stagger damage by tremor count and say that it is like 10. It's going to put in 10. We are now going to check if there are any reduction factors. The way I'm going to do this is not too sure to me yet, but there is going to be a way to calculate this. I'm probably going to do a flag-based system, which is like the damage has the attribute of tremor burst. That is going to see that the attribute is attributed as a tremor burst, and it is going to disrupt it. It's going to have the damage accordingly, so it's going to have it, and then down. It's going to be 5. Takes the 5 stagger damage. Then, after that, you may choose to do any reductions. That is going to be a prompt. Prompts are going to be basically, it's going to tell you, hey, pick yes or no. Whatever you pick goes ahead with that. What's going to happen there is, if you choose to ignore any reductions in your tremor count, when it prompts the reduced tremor count by 2, that follows, flagged as the part of tremor burst. At source, kind of, you can then reduce it. You can choose not to see as reduction or not. There's your prompt. Okay. Something like this. Combat mode. Controlled chaos. Once per scene when you inflict an ailment, right? So upon hitting you inflict an ailment, that's when we call this the trigger. That's going to be a very complicated trigger, but we'll see how it goes. You may increase the amount inflicted by 1 and gain through the same ailment. That's going to be an interesting one to deal with because you can choose it, but when you do choose it, you get both these effects. You're in the scene with 5 or more of an ailment. You may either gain one save light or one resolve. This is going to be kind of an interesting one because ending scene. Every time you end scene, it's going to cause all these triggers. It's kind of an annoying one to deal with. Again, the interesting thing about these tabletop systems is they have a lot of prompts that have a lot of choice to them. Like, if I were to design this, I wouldn't even give you a choice, right? After I'm finished, just do whatever, so I don't have to worry about that prompt. This SotCIE system does have a lot of these prompt-based reaction choices that can be made, which are always fun, and it's nice to have that agency, but I will say SotCIE has a ton of them to where it will probably still in the combat a tiny bit, and then you have to spec up. In the grand scheme of things, it actually doesn't really slow you down too much, I don't think, unless you're in a really deep thought process, because, well, a lot of things. A lot of things are running off of, right? A lot of things are getting slowed down by your microprocess and your microprocess work, all of the micromanagement. So these type of things don't slow things down in the grand scheme of things, and will probably slow things down a bit more when we get to this and for you guys to interact with it. And then when you end the scene with more attack, you gain more strength. This is just going to issue automatically. All of this is a lot of just prompts that trigger other functions. The cool thing is we can write a combat ability as a function. We can make a function that has all these flags, attributes of the character. The character, I should list, the character is going to have a list of these flags, right? These are like, these kind of prompts in a way where when it is going to have these flags, when a specific thing occurs and it causes a flag, it's going to have a flag check for these flags. Very simply, if the character has this specific flag, it will go to whatever the flag points to. Maybe it points to a attribute here of the combat ability, and does things off of that. Everything else here is mostly attributes wise. Elements and stuff, these are not going to be starting at 0. What's going to happen is the elements is going to be kind of, I'm going to say an array of objects. The reason I say that is because it's kind of make which order do things get added in kind of matters to some degree. So yeah, we're going to probably make it like that. If you look at my scratch-based combat system, terrible thing to look at the time you do. The eyesore that is block-based loading, but of course what you do when you're with your child. Oh, it's the, is it this manager? Yes, it is this manager, I believe, yes. The way this system works with statuses is it kind of adds it to an array at index 4 of the character data. Unfortunately, this is a very gruesome thing to look at because back in the day there wasn't really good data manipulation, so I made a list with all of these arrays at set intervals, which has 7 pieces of data allocation. The data allocations methodology was very crude, but the point being was that your statuses were at, were they at 4? No, they were the 4th index beyond your demarcator. So here, like, you have SPD, which is Seduction, Baton, Defiance, then like, start time, end time, potency. And yeah, that was kind of how that worked. So anyway, we're going to be doing that. If the status is not listed on you, we can assume you do not have it. It's a very good system. Instead of having like a list of statuses that exist, and having to add new ones down here as the fight demands it. All of this stuff up here, we're going to keep this as basic attribute data because it could be negative. I know these are the only ones. I think the age and stuff isn't actually like part of the actual character sheet. Like, we more so don't want to go because this is a fan-made of a fan-made thing, which job making the fan made thing of the fan made thing of the fan made thing. I like the official option. Yeah, this is the character sheet. This is the actual character sheet. And these are the only data points we really need to worry about. Of course, story variants and tragic flaws, because we don't need them. I don't know what this stuff here. Everything down here we do not need to worry about, and I will say limits and stuff are going to be important. That's going to be native to the character data. And so yeah, these are all the data points I need. Current health, final health, current stagger, max stagger, min light, current light, max light, like regenerate, all of that. Obviously, the game system overall is going to have which characters are on the field, other map passives. Hello, I might add them just because it's easier to have as a foundation system. And then, like what cycle one, what scene one is the correct term. So like a lot of the stuff here is fluff that I don't need to worry about. So I think we can start there. Let me make a new folder. Because currently, right now, I basically work it off of zip systems. Yeah, actually I'm gonna make a whole new folder for everything. Okay. Looking for a couple other things here. All right. Alright, so here we are. So, the new system here, this folder here, what this is actually essentially is everything I've been previously working on with my Planus Rolecall system. A lot of issues here. Let's go into a particular game, 0507, game A. You'll see all of the folders here and all of the data here, so every time I open these JSONs, you'll see the data here, so it just shows basic data like units, what units there are, asset. That's going to be some other issues that I'm not going to worry about. All of the asset stuff I will not be worrying about for a long time. We'll see if we even get to that by the end of August, but the goal is to get to it. What map we're running, which we do not need here. I mean, technically we're going to have it background asset, which is gonna make the background now kind of making this. Really get the point. Console. Console's very important. For a long time, we're not going to be making any visual elements. We're going to be doing everything off the console. But the console will be automated. It won't be like my Planus Rolecall where I have to do everything step by step and do all the menu values, like actually doing damage values. The console simply prompt me pick one of these choices. So the first couple of days will actually just be developing the console because I actually don't have a good console system. I'm gonna run this. Yeah, so like if I go into this, not like that. Right, this has been my console. It is very, very bad. So this is gonna be kind of something I develop. It's pretty atrocious. I might watch some tutorials on that, but not on stream. That is but it's a lot of learning that I currently lack the ability to do. Kind of one of the interesting things about coding on stream is that it is so exhausting to talk. It is so exhausting to code. Both of them are very language intensive and mental intensive, and big ones in both systems. Double layering them. Oh boy, that's not a fun time. So I might do a lot of coding off stream just because there's a lot of Xbox patches I'm gonna have to get through when there's gaps in my knowledge. Because I do not know what I'm doing in this digest. But I do want to actually code something up today. Even if it's very minor, even if it takes me an hour to code something very simplistic. Just because showcasing the process is very fun. Notes documents. I wonder if the music is louder than me. I hope it's not. I actually specifically reduced the volume of it so that it wouldn't be louder than me, but also, you know, this is always very quiet. I think it might actually be a bit too loud. But I've actually never checked. Let me actually check. How loud is it? Okay, unbiased, and we'll say, without trying to make it sound like, and see how loud this is. That should be better. I did realize why my volume is always so low on YouTube when I am doing anything that requires YouTube background music. It's because I set it's like so much louder than me for some reason. It's always so much louder than my microphone. So that's always an issue. But it has been resolved. It should be a lot more calm. And actually, I should be a bit more audible now. Oh boy. Yeah, this is going to be a very long process. A very tedious process to do. Also because commentating over the coding is very, very tiresome. I'm realizing how tiresome it is. Not even coding. Just explaining my thought process because there's a lot to it. Now we don't need this anymore. And we certainly don't need this anymore, though. It's a good idea to show off like what actually constitutes everything here. Yeah, actually, hold on. I do want to check something real quick. So, for instance, this is the data that I was using in my system. It was very, very bad. This was actually the first time I ever made file systems for my games. This is, well, okay, it's the first time I've ever had a save data that had comprehensive character data that was not normalized. Because in Scratch 100 there is a save data system, but it doesn't include things like max health, min health, and stuff like that, because it really only needed to know what items were in your inventory and what quests you had completed. That was it. And this is very different from that, because, well, if you look at it, actually has data points. Now my current save data system is much more sophisticated, but not as sophisticated as, of course, the zip system I'm now currently developing for this system. You can see some interesting data points that were just kind of bad. So nothing was ever like really emphasized, but it was like, what is the character's ID? Oh yeah, it was demarcated by vertical lines instead of new line characters. That is so interesting. And it showed, I don't even know what the rest of this stuff was, but it was very, very poorly designed overall, I will say. It didn't have like your health. I think this is like your speed max. How many dice you have? Yeah, speed min max, how many dice you have. Is there any value for the light? I don't know if, oh, maybe this is light or light chat. I don't even know. That's not important anymore, because we don't have to worry about that anymore. So, let's get back to this. Okay, so, all the data points on a game. So of course there is the JSON, which is just what units there are and all that. And the modern one does have like the console, so yeah, the console, and they will probably add things like game header and stuff, because it helps relay everything. Now the issue is of course rich text. I will be probably changing to the rich text that Godot uses instead of my system that I use for Scratch, which was this tag demarcation system, which was very, very rough. It worked enough though. And then like everything else here. And then the spawn here, A1 spawn, this is when it comes to spawn points of this map, which I would not have to worry about. I don't have to worry about spawn locations. Now that being said, on the visual system there is some spawn location demarcation, but that is already predefined based, it's mostly predefined based on the map. And we'll figure that out as we go. I don't actually know how Limbus and Runa do it. They have a bit of an interesting approach. And what else do we have? You don't need the go to deck. Actually, we will maybe make assets and actions. The ref here is an empty file. It's just telling me, hey, this is the ref point for the entire tree to be built off of instead of having unnecessary over-nesting. Woo! Basically, find the path of the ref file and then make that the root of everything else. You will just subtract when you are making everything else. So I can nest my folder with the ref as deep as I want. However, it's at the same scope as the ref will become the actual game files. And exporting words with them, which actually I will have to make the export system. That's going to be very tough. Essentially how export system will work is that really there is a specific hierarchy limit. Like there is no folders here. I don't know. I might allow you to have subfolders. I just don't know how I'm going to approach that. I think subfolders will have a different demarcation system. Yeah, I think subfolders will be a really difficult concept. That's going to be something I'm going to implement. Maybe not today. Maybe we will today, but talking a lot and ranting about how this system works is quite tiresome. I'm actually really feeling it. Because when I stream Nimbus, there's not a lot of talking, it's more just doing. I didn't realize how hard talking can be sometimes. Interesting. Or it's because I haven't been doing anything for months on end, so now I'm like, wow, I can actually do things. I can speak things. I'm basically lecturing about how everything here works. Funny enough. So let's talk about every single folder here, right? So we start with actions. That's gonna be something, that's gonna be essentially skills, is gonna be what the actual term will be. The character skills. Why do I separate them from the character? Because I can. Really, the reason why I do this is because sometimes characters can share the same skill, although by name only, which is why the tag here is a bit different. It's not, it's like, they defend one. But the character itself doesn't have the actions. It is the actions that are themselves a specific unit. This comes down to the, again, action to reaction, reaction to action. When you make an action, you have to make a copy of specifically the action that can be mutated as is needed, because there's usually not much permanent mutation, and even in this system there isn't any permanent mutation for the engineer, which is a different issue we'll get to when we get to character creation stuff, which is going to be something else. Having an automated game maker is going to be very important, because that is what takes a lot of time as well. Making the game scenario is very hard, because you have to make sure everything actually functions, all the packages are in correctly. It's going to be a very fun ride. What matters though is oh, I just dropped something. Oopsies. I don't know where it went, doesn't matter to me. But essentially, the actions need to be in a specifically unique position, so that it's easier to reference them when I am actually trying to cue an action and read components off of an action and then actually editing the action in its individual state. Because actions can do that. For instance, gaining power, losing power, that kind of thing. I think there's some where, in Ruina specifically, I know there are some where if you lose cash in the first dice, the next dice will gain power. Things like that. Gotta make sure that I am accounting for that in a local scenario that doesn't affect everything else. That's when the action queue kind of comes to play, but it's not gonna be an actual action queue, it's gonna be more of a dice attribute. Gonna be kind of a hard one to code because it's gonna be a bit different than how I originally imagined things with how I've originally imagined things with my current system with Planus Rolecall. Assets, we don't have to worry about this at all, but we will worry about it in the future when we actually start adding animations and things. Assets will also have animation details as well. Yippee! Mostly gonna be SVGs probably, but PNGs are also now and things like that. Spice sheets and all kinds of things that you know and love. Pretty cool stuff. Something I'm gonna have to learn is how to create my own node trees and stuff off of existing node structures. I really don't know how to do it in Godot. It's gonna be something that's gonna be really challenging to figure out. That's gonna be very fun because, you know, when you're doing different things, they're generating different characters, they're gonna want different file type systems depending on who made them. Functions. Functions are just functions. They are specifically, separately localized things where if I call a function and it doesn't exist in the predefined function bank of methods, you can call this function, which is a JSON file, which will then do all of the micro adjustments that I need. It's just going to be a very, very unofficial, simple way to do things when the official channels are way too complex. Basically just basically just macros. Items. I will never worry about this. We do not need items. Items will of course trying to be more like other TTRPGs where you can consume items with combat to do things like potions and the like. Star of the City doesn't actually have this in the base system, which is very interesting. It's just very Nimbus Luna symbol system. There's no item actions. It is just you do things in accordance to your dice and your skill lists. Very cool. So I don't have to worry about that. Map! I don't have to worry about it. It's so nice. Statuses! I will absolutely have to worry about them. They are the backbone of everything. This is gonna be very fun because the base statuses are very simple. I can probably code all of them in a single day, right here, right then. Once I make my entire syntax. That's gonna be a very fun one to do, making syntax. Might be a tomorrow thing, might be a Friday thing, who knows. Units, very important. These are the actual characters. I call them units. I think technically they are called, what are they called here? Are they called units? I think they're called characters. I'm not sure. But yeah, the units are important. And that's everything. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna copy this. I'm going to make a new folder, which is gonna be called 2026-08-05 game. And then we're going to say goodbye items, goodbye map, and there we go. We don't even need assets right now. Let's actually just not even have assets in the folder. You know, we won't need them later. We won't need them now. No assets. No worrying about it. Now the question is, do I want to keep referencing up with this guy? I think it'll be pretty simple. He's already pre-made. He already works. Although I could use their enemies in here. And there's apparently a whole list of characters here that I can reference off of. So maybe we'll do that. Because of course the issue with this is there's a lot of other data that we need to worry about. And if it works for enemies, it'll work for players with a bit more modification. So, let's just use a hooligan. This is always very fun because, yeah, they're pretty simple. They have a lot of basic simplicity to them. Yeah, so hooligan has 4 actions. Code these up very quickly. So let's get moving on that. I'm gonna move that to my other screen. And we can start designing that up. Let's see. Alright. Let's do something like that, I guess. Does that work? I suppose so. So, let's begin. I'm gonna just call this the hooligan. And when we start with this character, we can now just call it a hooligan. What color do I want to use for them? Something very, very stale, like 64, 64, 80. I think that's a pretty fair color. Let's see how that actually looks in person. I think this is a pretty good Canto 1 hooligan card to play if I do say so myself. Why don't we put on the Backstreet's music actually? Hold on. Music change time! Woo! Okay, every time I loop on YouTube, there's like a 10% chance that it won't respect my looping. Look at that, like it just doesn't respect it. What the heck? Okay, it should be working now. Sometimes YouTube just kind of sucks to work with for music. Such is the sin of using YouTube for music, I guess. I don't know. Tier is now just going to be called the class, and that is canard in this case. And then unit data. I don't know why this is like separate. Like realistically, they could be in the same thing. I'll get back to that later, but we'll go with current health for now. 35. Max health, 35. Heal rate does not exist in this game, unlike my system. Stamina does not exist. Instead, we're going to have stagger, which means that all of this stagger data, oh my goodness, it does not loop properly. Why do you not loop? YouTube sucks. YouTube sucks. That's my verdict. My verdict is that YouTube sucks. Very simple. Very simple. All this stagger stuff, though, is not necessary. Very nice. Look at how this... And weight doesn't exist. Exhaust doesn't exist. All of this movement stuff doesn't exist. Defense doesn't exist. Ah! Very nice. Now, max stagger is going to be 20. And current stagger, I might do stagger current. No, I think current stagger is better. And current stagger is going to be 20. Now there's some other data here that we need, which is the speed dice. Speed dice size is going to be 6. And then speed dice amount is going to be 1. And actually up here I'm going to also include light. Current light is going to be 3, and max light will be 3 as well. Now we can start talking about all of the other values. So with slash pierce and blunt, there is slash damage and slash stagger. So we can just go slash damage, and that's going to be 0. That just means it's a plus 0. Blunt damage. That will be plus 2, so we just put in a 2. And then going pretty good. Actually, the entire first half of the entire stream up until this point was me just yapping about how everything works and how I'm building off of my old systems to create this system. It's a very fun listen of me just yapping if you want to hear nonsense. Actually kind of tiring to just speak non-stop about everything I've been working on for the past 2 years, essentially. Well, like a year and a half. But it has been quite a lecture. Yep. Oh, look at that. All of this will mechanic stuff, gone. Oh yeah, light regen. I did forget about that. It's very entertaining to talk to you, so yes. I do just like screaming into the void. Okay, so interesting thing here. Okay, so emotion does exist, but it doesn't exist on these characters. I will still include it anyway. I'm gonna play on the assumption that if it doesn't exist, it is naturally a 0. Emotion points is important in the future, but for the moment, it will not be too important. We've been pretty good. It has been pretty fun making nonsense stuff. I don't have school starting for another 3 weeks, but that also means that school does start in another 3 weeks. And it's gonna be year 2 of college, so I actually have to like use brain cells and all that. Man, that's been pretty nice. So base statuses and conditions. Oh yeah, conditions. That's just other prompt values. Basically just like native functions. This is kind of a bit of a weird thing here, because function list here is just like what functions can this thing... I think it's more like what functions do I need for the character to operate, which is going to basically read off of other attributes here for what functions are needed. Okay, so inventory, I don't actually need to worry about inventory anymore, and equipment I don't have to worry about. The only thing I have to worry about is now action list, which was handled by items in the past. So in the past, I just had an item, an action list. I would just copy that and then remove this here. So yeah, I think the function list would just be what functions do I need for everything to operate. If that function is not in the function list, the game will scream at you and say, hey, this function is not implemented or is not in your data set. Make sure it's in the data set. I think that's what I'm going to use functions for. I don't know what else I'd use it for, because conditions are basically functions that are occurring regularly with flags. Although I should actually include the flag list here as well, but this is just the data set. This is just the base data. This isn't actually the actual active character data, this is the passive starting data. So we're going to keep that, I think. And that is the character's base data created. Passives we'll get into. That basically would go into conditions. Conditions are basically passives. I could probably rename this just passives. And it will read off of other functions, which I can probably make this. It will read off of an on-death signal, and if the on-death character has a name, which is a hooligan, which I guess is actually where this comes into point. Passives will have a hidden passive, which is like the attribute is, actually no, it's one of the hooligan's enemies are defeated. Okay, so it's on death of an enemy. On death for enemy, recover 1 light. It's a pretty simple process. Just editing when the attributes here. I don't know if I need all this unit data here. If I remove this bracket, I'll decide. This is relics of an old time. The original way I made everything. So I may as well just start working. Can't speak. Should start working on the actual actions. So let's start renaming all of these. We first have hooligan dash 1, hooligan Harry 1, hooligan Yikes 1, and hooligan knife. Oh, it's knight instead. Knife. Knife 1. So we'll start with bash. The name is, of course, going to be bash in. Instead of stamina, we now have the cost, which is just going to be 1. There is no type or tier system. Min-max roll is an issue for the individual dice. Formulas do not exist. Timescales do not exist. There is no unique clashing system. There is no unique defending system. The text is still going to be important, but text is going to be per dice. There will be a start text, start type text, each dice text, and then the end text will be the full rendering block. This is unironically so much cleaner than what I normally have to do. So conditions will go at the bottom. This is obviously, again, conditions that just occur as is necessary. Other random things. No, actually. Do I need a conditions block? Because the conditions block has always been passive stuff. And there is no passive... There's nothing really passive... I mean, there is passive stuff, but it's called proactive. So this is where we get into the rule set here. I believe it's under... Where is it? It's under combat. Yeah, so there is a proactive and reactive tag. I don't actually know how these tags work, so I'm going to have to read up on that again in a moment. Going back to this though, what I will say is this is going to be pre-text and then post-text. So these two are going to be each end of the text block. There's no pre or post text for this because there was no extra on use or unfinished conditions. Now we go into dice 1. And then what type of dice is it? It is going to be a blunt. The blunt offense. And then the dice is going to be a 6. And then the base is going to be 2. And then we now will have all of the individual conditions for this. Since the system only has a specific number of tags, I can actually just work with them individually, right? So dice tags are check, dash, lose, win, hit, and crit. And there should not be more than 1 per thing, so we will just have hit. Now, theoretically, this is going to be an array of things. I can make this an array if I need to, but this is what the hit condition does. Now, the issue with hit is that there are some things which are going to be not as a response to landing a hit, but in the process of landing a hit that need to be calculated. So, with the hit command, do I make a before hit modifier? Because technically, deal 2 stagger damage, I think deal 2 stagger damage comes after though. So, like, after you do your main hit, it does an additional 2 stagger damage, but in the same hit process. This play might be a bit weird though, but yeah. So bonus damage is this should just be bonus stagger 2. So the method here only takes a single argument. It does not have a unique augment system. How do I describe this best? I think the best way to describe this is like bonus damage and stuff. It has a single, it just takes a single value, so you don't need to emphasize it anymore. It just bonus stagger, hey, it does this. Conditions. Are there any conditions at the moment? No. I don't know. Do I need a conditions block? Because that's just going to be proactive, reactive type of stuff. Which, I don't know. Like, is there any real use of proactive, reactive in this? So, proactive. You may spend 1 extra light to set this so attack with the 2. Interesting. Attack weight, special. What? Oh yeah, attack weight is a thing. Proactive? Okay. Reactive. I'm guessing proactive is when you use the skill, and reactive is when it gets used on you. So ego passives is going to be a different thing. We'll get to egos when we get to egos. I'm not going to worry about that now. But basically, you're just going to make enemies first and then make players later, because players are more mechanically in depth than the enemies. The reason why I'm doing this, compared to PLC, players and enemies actually have the same mechanical depth to them. Typically, players have players do not have it naturally more, but in practice have more by value of being characters that can manipulate their builds a bit more. But they all have the same access to the same amount of stuff. There's nothing that makes a player or an enemy stronger than the other. Proactive, the skill can only use on 2 by the target's fastest available speed dice. That's interesting. That's such a weird thing. I guess this is so you don't use like Vigo speed dice to take it. You have to spend your highest one. That's cool. The skill cannot be responded to. But not when used reactively. Interesting. Yeah, I guess like nothing really has like natural attack weight, which is kind of weird. I mean, these ones do. Yeah, so I'll put attack weight in as just like a thing. I mean, not really. I'm just gonna assume it's base 1 if it doesn't have anything specified. Same thing with emotion points. It's not gonna cost to require emotion points if it doesn't say. Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, also here, text. So each dice has specific text it's gonna have to read through. So that is the first skill! Look at that. Very, very nice. Next up is parry. Dice 1 is going to be a block dice. Power of 6, base of 0. It does nothing else. Literally just does nothing else. Dice 2 is going to be blunt offense. 6, 1, and that's it. Very nice. It's like very empty stuff. Then we have a yikes. which is a cost 0, and it is just an evade. 1d6 evade. That's like everything. I think you don't even need some of these empty values. Compared to like what my base system is, which is so much text data, there's so much data that my system uses. This is like so simplistic by comparison. It's like kind of envious of how simple the system is. And now Knife Rush, an actual difficult skill to make. Is it? Knife Rush. Costs 2. Dice 1 is a slash offense. 1d6. The text is inflict 1 bleed. Now they're all icons. I will not worry about those at the moment. My system never used icons. This system does use icons. And also doesn't end in periods. Except for a DL2 stagger. So there's like inconsistencies. I don't know. So hit will then be status inflict. And that will be status is going to be bleed. And now in my system I use like shorthand like bleh, but we're just gonna use bleed. And then potency. It's mostly because of console command stuff. Potency 1. Or I probably should instead of using potency just use call it count 1. And now we will repeat that 3 times. Now I can see that it does get a lot bigger when you actually have like many dice doing more than just nothingness. So now there's like actual like text. The next one is going to be Pierce. It's a 1d4 Pierce. Fix 1 bleed. Everything else inflicts 1 bleed. That's the entire action! Look at that! It's a very simple process. Wow! Didn't really show off everything that needed to be shown off, but it does give you the basics. Now if I go to Ragnar, obviously his system is a lot more complex. I think there's just like unstable engine, which is one of the unique actions that you can pick up. Very interesting. He has a lot of things, which is like barrier and stuff, which is a different issue. But that's gonna be a gain status, barrier, and then all of that. It's pretty cool stuff. And yeah, I will say this is pretty nice. You can see that the text does explode when you have a lot more stuff to it. 3 dice, each inflicting 1 bleed does actually add a lot of text, so it can be a bit more complex, but it's a very, very simplistically structured thing. Very nicely structured. That's cool. I like it. I tried to save the Google Sheet instead of one supposed to be saving this file. And that's kind of how the hooligan works. And then also instead these actions need to be changed into hooligan dash 1. Hooligan parry 1. Not base dash. Supposed to be base playable. Hooligan. Yikes. Yiked. Hooligan knife. I almost wrote knight again. I don't know, my brain cannot type properly. And yeah, that's pretty good. That's a really good start to everything here. All the data here is very solid. Emotion points and stuff will come later. For now, we're just going to start with this. And remove everything else here. Now I do have to talk about the game stat. And then I will have to make a status. So that's actually like a status. I never made one in my other thing. Bleed. Now bleed as a status is going to be very, very hard to create. Now first of all, units, A1 is going to be, we're going to make A1 a hooligan. I'm not gonna have it require extra functions here. We're just gonna start with this. And A2, E1 is gonna be hooligans. It's gonna be hooligan versus hooligan. There's gonna be no map, and then the console. And the console will have base permanent data, as I've done in the past. So, hooligan versus hooligan. And now bleed. So this is now when we get into how bleed works. Bleed. When using an offense dice, take damage equal to the count, then reduce by 1. At the end of the scene, take a damage equal to the count, and then half the count. So, the name is Bleed. The color, I'm going to use the color that I use in Planus Rolecall, which is CC5064. It's a bit of a maroonish color. It looks very bloody looking. I don't know, something like that. It will have icons in the future. Not an issue at the moment. But yeah. And adding images to the rich text is going to be something I'm going to be working on in the future, but not at the moment, because that's not a priority. The priority is making sure things are functional. So max stack is going to be interesting because the max stack is based on the fragile. This is when we're going to start getting to variables. So this is going to be a pretty interesting one to code up. So min stack is 0. The max stack is typically 5, and then we're gonna add some other stuff there in a moment. Yeah. So I think something in conditions is gonna be stuff like this, which are basically your flags. So maybe I just call this conditions, because it is like passives, but like conditions are specifically like when a specific trigger occurs, then do something else. And conditions can refer to specific functions, maybe. I have to think about that. Like, the biggest thing is, of course, data relay. When something happens somewhere else, how do you relay it to everyone else to make sure that they know the thing has occurred? Passives wasn't really gonna assure that because it was like offshore to somewhere else. Statuses will be adding flags to the character. Conditions. Conditions have always been about when X thing is occurring, when X flag occurs. Yeah. So conditions will be saying when X thing occurs, do another thing in a very fun manner. I need to do some 2D design. I might do that tomorrow instead of game dev. The thing about, like, for example, attacks and stuff, they don't really have any conditions by default. These conditions for the actions will never really occur because everything runs off of specific things. There's no prompt during the action loop that triggers something else. I don't actually need conditions for actions. Actions don't need conditions because they're a single step occurrence. They follow a specific, precise set of details. So what I will do is I will include the function list on them. Or maybe I don't even include this because I'm just gonna hope that things work, and if things don't work, then that's not my problem. It's not really the smartest coding tactic, but whatever. Look at how simple that is. It's a very precisely, simplistically designed thing. Very, very nice. Gotta make sure everything works in the moment. Conditions. So for bleed, conditions. So one prompt, one conditional prompt is going to be use offense. When the offense is used offense. So I believe this is how conditions work. So there's conditions, and each condition isn't anything. So used offense is going to cause this set of things, which is going to be taking damage equal to the count. I guess instead of bonus damage, it should be called deal damage. Deal stagger 2. Okay, so deal damage based on a certain value. The value is going to be determined by a different thing. So I want to make it say like basically essentially like bleed stack, right? Bleed stack. Like the problem is that bleed stack, how would you know? Because essentially when you go into the deal damage, this is your value. Your value is your parameter, and I have to reference that back to the bleed value. Unless the value is pre-sanitized. highest attribute stack. Yeah, I think like something like that. The deal damage, and you get, so when it goes into the deal damage function, before it implements the value, it's going to say, what is this value? It says get attribute stack, and it's going to reroute that back to the bleed stack. So each method is going to have a reference of the data set that it's running off of. So I can kind of pull this data back. That's what I'm going to probably do here. The next thing, of course, is going to be, and after deal damage, it's going to be I might just make a specific thing which is like change stack, because change stack would then be sensitive to, you know, the fact that like there's a min and max. Change stack would be a change attribute method. Is my idea. I don't know if I like that. It's like divide, so change stack by divide, so it's like stack. To dividing V1 by V2. After all that text, the term here is creature. Interesting. know why they're using the term creature, but go ahead, I guess. Okay, so status is fragile, and then but I do some operation on the parent, which is just getting status. Which I think my concept here is more so that, let's see. The concept here is more so that like you can imply this. If I don't imply that, if I don't do that, then the assumption is that this is the only statement here. Is what I'll probably do, which makes that simpler. Something like that. So like, kind of like how get attribute here is kind of working. Get attribute here is like is off of the current need value, but here we have to get the parent and get a different status, which is fragile, and then get that stack. Something kind of like that. I'm not sure if that works. And that'd be about. I mean, it works pretty well. Okay, I have to make sure that was sound. Okay, so everything there seems to be mostly working. So I'm just trying to bleed is actually the worst status to start with. I do need fragile. I mean, fragile not existing implies 0. I would like to have fragile though soon, but that is everything base there. Now it's time to actually make the project and start working on things. The fun part is going to be how do I design every single method here? And that's going to be the very difficult part of designing all of the data here. There's a lot of it. There's a ton of it. I could just make some more character data stuff, but I do want to start working on actually implementing things. But I will say now that everything here is done, I can actually zip this. And our first game data has been made. There are no functions, there are units, statuses, and actions. And then we'll start working on actually how to make all the data that is going to be in this. Because I don't know if anything I've made just now is going to stand the test of time. I might have to change syntax, or especially with bleed. I think bleed is the one that's going to have to change a lot because it's a very advanced status. I could actually change it to burn for now, just so I don't have to worry about things. I think we're going to do that. We're going to make the hooligans inflict burn instead. Because the problem with bleed is it is a complex status. So we'll do burn, which its color code is like bleed but reversed. It's a bit more orangey. I like it a lot. I don't have to worry about anything about the max stack issue. The max stack is simply nothing. There's actually no max stack. So when there's no max stack, you just don't list max stack, and it would just assume that there is nothing, there's no such thing as a max stack. Technically, max stack is -1, which is then just gonna scale into infinity. Because there's nothing that says that there's a max stack on burn. You can just throw whatever you want. And then conditions, the only condition is that end scene, you deal damage by the stack, and then the stack is gonna get halved. So, at the end of the scene, take damage equal to burn on self, then have the count. And that's the burn status complete. The quality shifted to the side. That's like the entire burn status. So all I have to do for the hooligans is make it so that, oh, I deleted it. Is that with knife attack, instead they inflict burn. And that's the entire thing. Now they do that. Now the hooligans inflict burn, and I don't have to worry about bleed. Makes it very simple because all of this is very easy to code. The get parent stuff is high complexity. That's like high complexity stuff. So bleed is just gonna kind of exist and be in limbo because I don't want to code this, the max stack, the fluctuating max stack issue. Anytime max stack changes, I probably have to change the current stack to make sure it doesn't exceed that. It's not easy. See, when I code on Scratch or something, or anything else that is like a predefined thing, I can use the logic of the coding base to make everything work. The problem here is that I am specifically coding on a low scope basis because I'm coding to the needs of the specific action, of the specific status, and it's just like really, really difficult. Like this type of coding is a lot more demanding of like a more mechanical movement system. And I'm actually like, moving around the tree, which can be pretty difficult. All things considered. So, very fun times. The way I run data will be very interesting. I might have to make like a whole memory system, like a kind of like a pseudo memory system where I can kind of hop around the memory base using pointers and stuff. Because pointers are basically how this is going to all go down, is making my own pointer system, kind of in a way. Which is kind of silly to think about. But essentially all this is kind of like a pointer to a local. Yeah, I guess the speaking words don't even make sense. That's not even how that works. I don't know, something. It's a very weird system. But yeah, I think I'm gonna copy over the Godot code now, and then we can start implementing a couple things and making sure everything works. So let me just make that real quick. And I can probably move this as well. I need to have a nice, pretty background for when I do stuff like this, so that there's like actually something interesting to look at. Oh, I closed Godot completely. I need to open it back up. Can I find the file location? There it is. I'm gonna straight make a copy of it and paste it here. I have to actually edit. I'm just like directly editing the file by making a copy of it. It works! Look at that. Now there was an issue with global.data tree. Doesn't have a scene. Oopsie, that's not what I meant to do. It's just like kill everything? Okay. Everything works again! Yay! Okay, cool. Ah. It makes me feel a bit more confident about everything. Let's fetch something. Let's go into actions, and let's fetch from actions a thing called hooligan bash 1. I think I just have to describe it just like that. I don't have to include the JSON, I don't think. Nope. Well, let's do knife, hooligan knife 1, and let's look into its dice 1, and let's just see what's in there. Oh. Okay, so I messed something up with the... Oh, because it doesn't do a thing. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. That should work though. There we go. So the entirety of dice 1 is a type / offense. Dice is 6. Basic. Now the funny thing is it converts to a double because it considers all numbers as doubles. It's very weird. But we just live with it. It's fine. The issue is when you download the thing again, everything's gonna be a double, and I can't sanitize that. What do? Nothing, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that. Life sucks. Godot is really weird with how it considers everything a double when it's just a number. I don't know. Interesting. But yeah, it just kind of reads all the integers as numbers. It's interesting. The text says hit to pick one lead. Woo. Okay, but yeah. That is the data there. I can see some other issues. Which is... I don't actually know what is up with this. Like, it's angry about something. I don't know what it's angry about. I don't understand this error. It works fine, so I don't really care, but it is throwing errors, which is something I should probably figure out at some point. But yeah, Game Manager right now is literally just like the archive data. File branching. Data tree is actually like all of the fetch data. The fetch data command is just all data tree is. It's just about what this is. Shallow search. I do want to see what premature end looks like. If I can do that. So let's say for here when we're reading it, we go to dice 1, and then we want to read like the we want to read the text. I think we can read 0. Let's see. If I read 0, what happens? It does do inflict 1 bleed. If I read 1, it will probably hate me for that. I just want to see what happens. Oh, it's only showing... Huh. That doesn't feel right. I would assume it would show... Maybe it's looping when it does that search. It loops. I don't know. It is still showing text. Something. If I do something. It's interestingly robust. But it probably throws a -1 and it's gonna be angry at me about something. I think with arrays it should give me some display of like what's going on. Like if I go to bleed text, right, so I'll copy this and I'll just put this over here. But if I go to statuses, bleed text, I will get all the text. Huh. Wait, bleed.json equals null? Why is it not like bleed.json? Can we not read that? So this is like the entire data set, right? It is actually like, this is like all the data. So actions, every single action is here. Functions. And then statuses, bleed.json is null. I don't know what that is about. And I didn't read burn either. Maybe since functions is no, but like units loaded. I don't know what's going on there. Huh. This used to be like unorganized. This used to alphabetize. At least that's fixed. But yeah, the issue of like integers and doubles here still problematic as ever. Which is very weird. I did not realize that bleed.json was giving me null values. What is causing that? Oh, this actually doesn't even have. It is missing burn too, so I can't fully diagnose the issue. Okay, status is bleed. Bleed is null, but burn is valid. Why is bleed null? That's interesting. But like between bleed and burn. Oh, it might be this. It hates hanging commas. It does hate hanging commas. Hanging commas for some reason kill the Godot process, the Godot JSON reader. It hates them with like a burning passion. It's really annoying. That was not it. Is there another hanging? I know it's usually. Oh, this one doesn't even have one. That's why. It didn't flag that as an error. Huh. That's so weird. It didn't flag that as an error. Okay. There we go. That does break everything because there's no wrap text. I think it should have an automatic wrap text function that I can work with. I'm wondering if this is still being caused by another hanging parenthesis, hanging comma. It's just not telling me where. But I'm guessing there's a hanging comma somewhere. So, the next test is when I do the text, can I go to line 1? Yes. That is going to be line, I'm guessing it's the second line at the end. Yep, the second line. Now, what happens if I go to the third line? It will just print everything. If it fails to find that value, it does print everything. Interesting. Okay. Cool. And it's not an error, by the way. That's not actually throwing an error. This is just the same issue I'm having before. I don't know what's up with that. It's specifically here when I'm file branch searching. When using an offense cell, I take the image. You can take out and reduce by 1. And yeah, this is kind of like a bad command prompt system. I don't like it. I need to fix it. But that's a different issue for tomorrow, I'm guessing. Because like everything here today is just making sure things function, which it does seem like they function. Actually, next thing on the list is making sure that I can get the console to work. The console is currently not connected to the game management here. It should just read directly off of this and then start playing off of at this point. The next thing is, of course, making sure which text works. I do want it to be nicely styled up because that will be very helpful for diagnosing issues in general. And also making the first version actually like kind of enjoyable to use. So that's like the goals to make things, you know, fun to use. So yeah, this actually does work. Of course, next we need to make action sequences and stuff, which now that the actions are coded in, right, we can start making action selection and then action points and all that. So everything is going pretty well. Again, this is a much simpler system. There's so much less overhead compared to my system, PLC. Don't have to worry as much about things breaking down. I might do some research on the console on my own time though. Final marathon rush of things I can implement real quick. I think everything is really good. I explained everything. About how I'm going to do stuff. I guess the last thing is to talk about what is going to be done from here, right? So we talked about everything here. I think it's time to talk about the final thing, a final lecture point about everything I am planning to do for this system. So, this is going to be a pretty long explanation. Essentially, what is going to happen is we have all of our data, right? We have our whole data thing. This is just the save data over here. This save data is now going to go into other places, right? All the save data goes into other places. So, what is going to happen is we're going to start the game by first, of course, looking at, we're going to generate the console, right? We have to generate the console. Console generation, something in there, but you know. We first generate the console. When we generate the console, that's going to start rendering stuff, and then we're going to then make characters. When we make the characters, what's going to happen then is essentially a whole side loop is going to happen. This is going to be added to what is known as the it's going to be called a character list, and it is going to then create an action list. This is just like the base actions that I can do for each thing. Just makes it a single. I mean, I don't actually really need this. Is in the character list. It's gonna have all this. But when I make the character list, everything's gonna be there. And then what happens after that is we're going to enter what is the game loop. So game loop begins with scene start. And this is where speed dice happen. And this is going to go under the dice queue. And then we are going to go into the dice loop. So of course, this is when we have the option to do save die. Which then interacts with the dice queue as so. The other option is to do an action. When we do a skill use, that's going to go into the skill bar. It's just going to have some other data points. And then target. And when you target, I can either do that. The target has two options, which are either going to be to do this same thing, which then won't be able to make a target because that's going to be selected for them. Or the other option is to do save dice. It's not the same as saving the speed dice though. This is specifically extra dice, which are not really the same as the save the speed dice or held. These are not really saved, they're more held is the correct term that I should probably be using there. With these extra dice, what's going to happen is this is going to go into the what's going to be called the dice bank, the dice list. And these skills will eventually feed back into the dice list. And after all of that, you're going to have the scene end. And that is going to then loop all the way back to the top. And that's like the entire game. That's the entire game loop. Most of it happens here. This is just like everything I've done so far. Well, I've done this so far. That's everything we already have. It's just the save data. We then have all of this. And then after a while, we also have what is going to be known as export. So we have so far completed save data, right? I'm going to save this elsewhere. Now, we've already done save data. This has been completed. We are now going to do, tomorrow, we are going to do console stuff and the make characters list. And then we are going to start the game loop. The game loop is where things get really fun. This is the actual meat of everything. And of course, export data. So everything this week is going to be basically just save data, console, make characters, export. Next week we're going to do the entirety of the game loop and then start scaling from there with all the terminology and everything else. Everything is going to happen in the game loop. This is where the real stuff goes down. But compared to PLC, this is very, very simplistic. So that is really everything for today. And tomorrow we'll do some more stuff. I might do the console on my own time though, just because I have to do a bit more research into the visuals of the console, more so than just like console for all the console rendering stuff. But that is essentially everything for today. Yeah, pretty good progress. This is actually a good way to motivate me to make something. So, yippee! That is all. Goodbye.